Chapter 16. Andorn backed up, nodding at Lyra's words. "Thank you," he said, doing his best to look calm. "We'll catch up to her and do what we can. Could you get all the farmhands inside and the cattle in the barns before the moon shines tonight?"
"We can, yes. Do you think that would be safe? The creature got into the small barn on the east edge last night anyway."
"It will help and will make our task easier," Andorn replied before he turned and hurried down the track towards the road. His eyes scanned the ground. There were too many tracks and prints for him to make out Kiana's among the rest. "Ulfr," Andorn said, looking to Saria, "can you get Ulfr to track her again for us?" Saria nodded, pulling the pillowcase out of her backpack again and holding it out to Ulfr. He only took a small sniff before he put his nose down, the smell no doubt familiar by now. The wolf quickly trotted down the path towards the road, but instead of turning towards the town at the end, he carried on away from the town, towards the next farm. "At least it's not the town," Jarlan said aloud, but Andorn didn't think this was much better. "There's still plenty of people who can die. Shepherds, milkmaids, and we don't want Kiana to come across the soldiers from the fort. They'll kill her. We need to catch her and keep her safe as well." No one disagreed with Andorn, but he picked up the pace as well, grateful Ulfr was tracking Kiana so easily. Saria also hurried along after him, helping to prevent the wolf from slowing to check where his companions might be. As the sun sank lower in the sky, the edge of it already gone from view, Andorn grew more tense. They weren't traveling slowly, but Kiana had a head start on them, and they still needed to get her back to the cave before the moon rose. And with each step they took along the road, the cave was left farther and farther behind. No one spoke, the priest beginning to tire, clearly not as used to the exercise as they were. Andorn considered leaving him behind, but even if Kiana had managed to control the beast inside her once and not harm him, he didn't trust that she would be able to do the same again. When he was growing up, he'd heard a story of someone like Kiana. A werewolf had bitten them, but they had been rescued. At first, they had healed and seemed entirely fine. But with each month and each full moon that passed by, they grew more and more under the thrall of the beast, and spent more and more time as it, until they had no longer been human at all. It was a fate he didn't wish on Kiana, but she was still at the early stages. It was possible that if she could be stopped tonight, then she would have more than 3 weeks before she'd be a danger to anyone again. 3 weeks in which they could search for a cure. It was enough time. They just had to stop her now. As they came closer to another farm, Ulfr veered off the path, heading towards a barn. A clear path through the field showed someone had gone in that direction recently, but the sunlight was fading fast. The tiny sliver of sun left, more than likely to be gone by the time they reached it. "John, go warn the farmer here to get everyone inside the farmhouse," Andorn said.
"But Kiana, I promised I'd take care of her."
The priest hesitated, clearly not wanting to leave Kiana to him. "I won't see her harmed. You have my word," Andorn replied, but the man shook his head.
"And I gave her mine."
"It's all right, brother,"
Thorgrim replied. "I took the same oath as you did. I will bear your word as if it were my own, and see her safe. But you can help the farmers here as well, and I am better suited to defend against the creature if it emerges before we can get Kiana somewhere else."
The priest looked as if he might argue again, but eventually he nodded and put his hand on Thorgrim's shoulder.
"Thank you, brother. May the goddess shine upon your task and give you great strength."
"And you, brother."
The priest finally nodded at Andorn and hurried away, focusing back on Ulfr, who stood 20 meters ahead, looking back at them as if wondering why they weren't following. Andorn carried on. "Please let her still be human," he thought, as they hurried through fields of young wheat, crushing some of the crop beneath their feet. But he knew the chance was slim. She had got too far ahead of them, and they would never get her back to the cave before she turned now. moving more warily as the hair on the back of Ulfr's neck rose again. Andorn tried to spot Kiana somewhere. The barn door was ajar, but it could easily have been left that way by someone else. Ulfr didn't think so, and stopped at it, sniffing briefly at the handle before turning to look at Saria. She came forward and rested a hand on his back before looking to Andorn. "I don't want to frighten her," Andorn said, "but be prepared for her to turn at any moment." He waited until everyone was ready, Saria carrying her bow by her side, Jarlan with his hand on his sword hilt, Mira ready to breathe fire, and Thorgrim holding his warhammer. Reaching for his own weapons, Andorn took a deep breath. He reached out for the door and opened it just far enough they could all go inside. The barn was dark, no windows built into it, and the outside light barely enough now to shine through small gaps here and there in the wood. As his eyes adjusted, he could make out the cart and bales of hay sitting on it. Behind it somewhere, he heard something rustle in more hay. Ulfr cocked his head and looked in that direction, clearly hearing it too. Andorn strode around the cart, finding Kiana on the floor, clutching at her stomach. She'd tied herself to the wheel axle with some rope she must have found nearby.
"Stay away," she said. "I don't want to hurt any of you. Not when you were so kind to me."
"It's okay. We won't let you hurt us, but this won't hold," Andorn said. "You're going to be too strong. Let us get you somewhere safer."
"There's no time."
She looked down, a grimace appearing on her face, her whole body going tense. "Seal the barn door as best you can," he said to the others. "We need to keep her in here with us."
"That's your plan? Shut us all in with the nasty beastie?"
Jarlan asked, not moving, but already Thorgrim and Mira were pulling the door closed and putting a beam across it. "More rope," Andorn replied instead of arguing. He was aware it wasn't a great plan, but something was better than nothing. Jarlan opened his mouth like he might continue to argue, but as Saria pulled a rope out of her pack and handed it over, he pulled his own backpack off his back and unhooked the rope that hung from it. Andorn quickly wound them around with his own, twisting the 3 lengths together. It was a crude way to form a stronger, thicker rope, but it would have to serve. While Kiana shuddered on the floor, Jarlan helped him tie one end to the cart, while Saria went to Kiana, putting a hand gently on her shoulder. Trusting Jarlan could tie a knot even better than he could, Andorn took the other end to Kiana and wrapped it around her waist. He didn't do it very tightly, knowing she would grow a little in that department, but tight enough it wouldn't easily slip off. At first, she pushed away, trying to wriggle away from the rope in them, but Saria applied a bit more pressure to her shoulder.
"It's okay, Kiana,"
Saria said, her voice calm and gentle, like she was soothing a child.
"We're just trying to help you. We don't want you or anyone else to get hurt."
Kiana continued to struggle, making Andorn's job harder, but Saria didn't give up, repeating the words as soothingly as she could. On the 3rd attempt, Kiana calmed a little, and by the 4th time, she stilled, allowing Andorn to pull the 2 ends of the rope together and bind her double. Once again, Jarlan helped with the knots.
"There, if any amount of rope will hold, this will,"
Jarlan said. "But she's going to be very strong."
"We should weigh the cart down as well,"
Thorgrim pointed out, picking up some old rusted horseshoes from a pile near the barn door. Mira immediately helped him, the mood still very somber as he and Jarlan fanned out to look for more metal or anything else heavy. Saria stayed by Kiana's side, rubbing her back gently and speaking soft words Andorn could no longer hear over the noise the others made. Ulfr stood a little way off, his hackles up and his eyes going between his companion and the woman on the floor. The wolf shifted from foot to foot, clearly agitated and not sure what to do.
"This might be useful,"
Jarlan said a moment later, finding a small oil lamp. "Better than open fire to see by," Andorn replied, pulling out his tinderbox. They quickly had it lit, the small flame enough to stop the darkening barn feeling quite so oppressive, but he had no way of knowing how long the oil would last for. Yarlin had clearly had a similar thought, however, as he went back to the place he'd found it, using the lamp to light up a set of shelves running along the back wall. They were mostly empty, a tin of varnish sitting at one end, the lid rusted and the contents ruined from overexposure to air. But knocked over, not too far from Yarlin, was another sort of tin, more oil. Yarlin grinned as he picked it up, almost as pleased as he looked when someone offered him ale, or found a good barrel among the cellars of the townsfolk in Fentonia. Andorn took it and topped the lamp up. He then tucked the rest into a pocket. He wasn't fool enough to leave something flammable lying around when they were about to be locked into a barn with a crazed beast. With that problem solved, Andorn took the varnish tin and Yarlin found a box of nails. They added them to the cart. It wasn't a huge amount more, but it was better than nothing. Mira came out of the dark on the opposite side of the barn, carrying a toolbox, and also added that. Sliding it between two hay bales, she sighed. "That everything?" Andorn asked when no one moved again.
"Looks like it,"
Yarlin replied as he swept the barn with the lamp. The rest of the barn was either more hay bales or empty. Andorn looked around frantically as Kiana tensed up again, shuddering on all fours. Saria turned to him, her eyes wide, her expression saying everything. It wouldn't be long now. He tried to shove the cart with all his might and test how heavy it was. It held for a moment, before it slowly rolled backwards, not weighed down enough to even stop his strength. In only a few minutes, something far stronger than he was going to be in the barn with them. "Everyone, onto the cart!" he yelled, getting up there himself and turning to help Thorgrim up. With the hay bales up there as well, space was tight, but he was soon standing on it with Mira, Thorgrim, Yarlin, and Ulfr. "Saria," he said, but she was still on the ground beside Kiana, speaking soothingly and stroking her back. She glanced at him a couple of times, glancing at the hand he held up to lift her up from the side, but she didn't move. His heart felt like it might stop, his breathing tight, as he watched her put kindness above her own immediate safety. Equally, he knew he couldn't ask her to stop. One look from Kiana, the pain in her eyes, the fear, and the way she leaned into Saria's hand and warm presence made it clear that the elf was helping. This was a woman in front of them, and she didn't want to become a monster just as much, if not more, than they didn't want her to. Waiting, Andorn stood, his hand held out, ready for that last moment when Saria would need hauling to a safer place. But there was no guarantee any of this was safe. They were going to have to keep the werewolf in here, with them, and that meant surviving an entire night against something that would constantly be trying to kill them. The only thing Andorn knew for sure, it was going to be a long night.